Hello, and welcome to Megan's Mystical Mashup, a conversation about life, the universe, and anything in between. I'm your host, Megan Rounds, and welcome to today's show. Today's guest and I have been friends for 30 plus years and is an original member of the Lightworkers Lab. In fact, her frequent and consistent, yet gentle, nudges were what brought me to the lab. When she's not busy with her muggle job in the front lines of healthcare in a lab drawing blood, or completing her master's degree in health informatics, which she finishes in March of next year, yay! You'll find her here in the main lab, the circle, or in the lab light room. She's also a solo parent to her 17-year-old son, Lucas, and she resides in the Twin Cities of Minnesota with her son, mom, and her special kitty, Lucy. She's about a 20-minute drive away from yours truly as well, which is super cool. She's experienced a bit of all the clairs as well as precognitive dreams, and has had some amazing metaphysical experiences that I hope will surface during our conversation. She's also a Reiki master, massage therapist, and bourgeoning master bullcrap detector. I say bourgeoning because it's always been there, but really this year it's come out as at a whole new level. You'll hear more about that, I'm sure. While this only just touches the surface of the information she provided me for her introduction, I figured you'd appreciate hearing it directly from her instead of listening to me read it. So without further ado, let's get this party started by giving a warm Lightworkers welcome to the fabulous Julie Ralph. Woo! And here we go. I'm going to just in just a second, she'll be with us. Oh, there she is.
Hello. I know. How exciting.
Oh my gosh. I know. It's like, well, it's a fun day.
I know. And I'm coffeeed up. Yay.
Woohoo. Oh boy. Yeah, good thing I have a timer then. Since Julie and I have known each other for so incredibly long and consider ourselves soul sisters, when we get together, time really takes on a different meaning. It's not linear, and we can talk for many, many hours, and it feels like, one. So definitely the timer is going to be a good thing to have today.
We'll have fun.
Oh, definitely. Well, thank you for joining me here today. I've been wanting to get you on the show, for over a year now. Julie was very, very helpful to me in that she helped me practice before I moved the show into the main lab. Her and I had a conversation in the lab light room over a year ago. And then ever since then, I'm like, come on the lab. But her schedule is such that, if you need any more than like a 20-minute increment, you have to schedule practically a year out for that. So.
I know. It's insane. It's insane. And Saturdays is usually strength training days. So.
Well, it's a different kind of strength.
Yes, it is. It's strength training Saturday, Pilates Sunday, and insanity Monday through Friday.
That's right. Yes. Well, so, I want to get you started by just asking you a very general question. And I know how this can evolve into many different things. So we don't have to stay on track necessarily. I may pull you back to a couple of key points here and there, but it's really just about you. So my first question to you is really just describe or tell us a bit about your spiritual journey or your, I kind of like those incorporated in, as far as your path to the Lightworkers Lab. Most people have both and.
Both and. Well, I've always been interested in the metaphysical. And good heavens. It started way back when I'd have precog dreams and I'd ask my roommates, this is back in Madison, in my teens and 20s. I'm like, I'd wake up with a smile. I'm like, I just had this dream that was so real. And I'd explain it to them and that would cement it in my own memory. And then it would happen that day.
Oh,
and
wow.
They would be like, detail for detail. I'm like, okay, if everything's going on track, this person is going to ask this question, which they'd never asked before, and they did. But it would come in fits and spurts, and I never put any credence into it because that's all new agey. I like duck in the back alley to go to the metaphysical store. It's like I had to hide something.
Yep, because in those that was back in the what 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
wasn't very open societally to metaphysical
Well,
things. And
yeah. And the dreams, I remember one place I lived at in Madison from the day we moved in. That's where I saw the dude that I talked to you on the phone about. But from the first night I was there, it was an old house. It was an old apartment. It had a half closet that went from like half the wall all the way up to the ceiling, and it was above my bed. And every night I would wake up at around 3 o'clock and that closet would bust open. Yeah, above my head.
oh my gosh.
And I even duct taped that baby shut. And there came a point where I journaled all the time. And I guess I was just pushed to ask questions of whatever was there to tell me who they were. So I would journal at night before I went to bed going, I know you're here. Who are you? And I would all of a sudden dream of a lady in the 60s who would come up to me and say, I'm Annabelle. And I'd wake up and it would be 3 a.m. and I would feel the energy in the wall next to me. Wow. It was weird stuff. And then my roommate kept having her posters getting ripped off her walls. And I asked whatever it was. I'm like, you know what? Like her or not, she's living here. I'd appreciate if you could respect her and not rip her posters off her walls. And so they stopped.
Did your roommate think it was you at first?
No, because it would happen in the middle of the night, you know.
Oh, okay.
And I kept saying, we've got a ghost here, you know, and she'd be like, that's poppycock. And so lots of weird things happened there, and it turned dark. Like, I had friends over and we did Ouija board trying to figure out who it was. Again, it was the 80s. And they were more Wicca, and they were very light, and they were beautiful people. But, you know, when your head and thoughts go places because you're afraid. Fear. Fear! Oh my God, yeah.
I know. Imagine that.
And I used to work overnights. And I remember once when I was on the phone to you, when you lived way out in Seattle, and we had a huge built-in buffet that had a little glass cabinet in the middle of it. And I'm watching TV on one side of the room, and that cabinet, it was about 5 feet away, and there was nothing in it. And I looked, and there was this woman staring at me from that little cabinet that had straight bangs, long hair. And I looked at it, and I was like, huh. And I looked back at the TV, and I looked back again, and it was gone. And then when I was on the phone with you, that house had a turret, windows that could see into my room while I was sitting in the living room talking. Mm-hmm. And that closet above my bed was open. And it looked like there was a man standing there. And one of the people that I had grouped with, and we were doing Ouija board and everything, had a person that would follow her called Belmont.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Because I used to live in the Belmont. I totally never made that connection, but that was way later.
Yeah. Oh, it was just bizarre. And I ended up moving away from there because the energy was so yucky. But that spooky energy followed me to the next place. And I remember getting ready to go out one night. It was daylight out because I figured, you know, they can't get you in the day, right? I walked out in the middle of my little efficiency, and all of a sudden it's like something walked right through me, and I got all the goosebumps, and I felt the energy. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what to do because I was so full of fear. And I grabbed the phone and I called a friend, and she said, you got to get your stuff together there. You know, you can't be scared of this. You got to go out and claim your space. So that's what I did.
Cool.
But fast forward, we could go on forever here. I had a lot of experience. I had a lot of experiences with the paranormal more. And a lot of the time when it came to clearing things up, I just knew what to do. You burn the incense, you say the prayers. And the Lord's Prayer, in fact. And I had, one of my friends is Julie. Her name is Julie. She's a professor out east, and she's the most scientific person on earth. She teaches, you know, genetics. And so she was with me when a lot of this stuff happened. And I pretty much lost a cat due to that. When we had a cat named Pig, you know, like you had a cat named
Bean.
yeah. Yeah, this cat just like got stuck with something and started attacking everyone.
Oh.
And we lost her. We didn't know if it was, you know, I just knew that we stopped doing any of that stuff because I was afraid. And again, fear, you can't have fear.
Yeah.
And then I moved up to the Twin Cities. And things calmed down a lot. Fits and spurts, went on with life. Got married, had a baby, got divorced, you know, as it were. And I just had a big curiosity, and I started wandering around on YouTube, and you start to be able to discern the charlatans from the not charlatans. And I started watching Crystal's videos, and I'm like, well, this is interesting. So that's back when she did readings a lot for people. And so I signed up for a reading, and she seemed to know exactly what was going on in my life, because I said a lot of this stuff had turned off because I guess I was immersed in real life. You know, even though that's real, this is, you know what I mean? The task at hand was being dealt with. But she opened my eyes to the fact that none of the gifts I had gone away. You know, because I thought it all went away. I used to read cards for friends. I used to do all this without even thinking. And then all of a sudden, I started studying more on it, and everything just seemed to go away. And I think it was my period where I just had to focus on myself. So, but Crystal helped bring a lot of clarity, and then she started having classes about 6 months later. When she warned me that my ex-husband was going to do stuff and pretty much called it a year before it happened, you know, I took note, and part of me knew that, you know, this was a seed that was planted, that there was an awareness that this was coming. So I kind of rolled my eyes like, but I didn't know what the outcome would be. So I joined her first class. It was cute. Her first class that she started on Periscope. So that's how long ago that was. And I asked if I could be part of it, and bam, I was in. And that was it. And she started the Lightworkers Lab a little bit after that. And, you know, I've been part of just about every class there is, as long as I had time. The Intuitive Intensive is the only one I've always started participating in, and then class got too busy, work got too busy, life got too busy. And it's like, So
I feel like with the Intuitive Intensive, it's been similar for me, but at the same point, I made it further this time. And it's not like I can't continue on. In fact, I'm being called to move forward a bit. I just had to integrate some of the newer things that I didn't the first time around. And so I feel like it's at my pace, whether I am intentional about what that pace is or not.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, these things are really surfacing now, but other things were surfacing last year. And the way it integrates naturally and energetically is pretty fascinating to me, because it's like, I mean, just like this week, I'm like, wow, that's so interesting, because I'm really getting into like different dimensions and things which are discussed in the Intuitive Intensive. And I didn't really, my brain was not my brain, not just my brain, my energy, my mind, my soul was not in that place last year, but now it's very much in that place. And it's like,
yeah,
oh,
it's
that's so
layered.
cool, because that was like, I remember taking notes on that particular class, and now it's like, well, I better move into whatever I missed since then, because, you know, it's like, I'm ready for more.
Well, yeah, because all the dimensions, that was that part of the angels? Many mansions, yes. Yeah, and that fascinated me, but it was hard to wrap my head around. And the more we've repeated it, and the more we felt it, especially like at the Bliss Retreat the first time, I mean, it was amazing, because the first night we were there, I felt like I was scanned.
Yeah, I remember that.
Was bizarre. And then I had that feeling when I was home, and I know that had to have been interdimensional and probably an upgrade of some sort.
Yeah.
but I've never felt like I was scanned like that before. I was like, whoo, wow.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know if I've had, I mean, I don't think it's the same sensation you've had. I've had more recently experiences where I feel encompassed, but not by anything negative. Like, so by something positive where I am just basically filled with just the highest vibrational sensation of love. And it's not my head doing that.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff too.
Yeah. In fact, last night when I was meditating, I had some pretty profound things, but one was a visual of a hand with like a pitcher. Well, it's more like a watering jug, except with a spout, not like the little holes that some have, pouring water or some liquid out on the right side of. So like the visual is right. Well, it may not look left. I don't know where it looks like on the camera, but for me, this is my right side, and it's just like a hand coming out with this pitcher pouring water out. And at first I'm like, well, that's an interesting visual to have out of the blue. I wasn't thinking about a need to water anything, it just came out.
Well, water's emotion too.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and I've had a lot of that going on. In fact, I think it's some kind of I think it's like an up leveling, because I've had dreams recently where I'm in a room with other people. Now I'm an intuitive empath, and have all those clairs and experiences with them all, but empath is my strongest. And I've recently had these dreams where I'm in a room, and I'm pure emotion. It's this,
Wow.
I've had like 2 dreams like that where it's kind of, I think it's telling me what my superpower is. I've always thought being an empath is, originally I thought it was like, well, something I have to learn to manage, but I also really, since then, I've recognized the great strengths associated with it. And now I've been asking, how do I incorporate that into my work and blah, blah, blah. And it's showing me, I'm just not quite sure that I have the tangible aspects of that. But that being in a room and being all emotion, basically emotion of everybody else, is affecting my vibration and its information for me. And it explains to me why I really don't feel things until I leave. I mean, I feel them so much that I don't notice what they are until I leave, which I've always wondered about.
Well, I'm the same way, not with emotion, but with my words. I am not a person that I could just like stomp my foot and debate on the line. I have to sort myself out. And I don't know if it's just the wanting to be right and fair or what it is. There's some times when all bets are off. She's going to blow. But for the most part, my words they're there, but I haven't been able to ungarble them. And I'm working on that. And part of that is finding my own authority and being in my own authority. And that's what I've been working on, is standing in my own authority instead of walking away.
I do. And I'm very, very happy for this part of your journey, because it's a long time coming. I think it's a part of your journey. It's not like it should have happened sooner, but it's so nice to see that you're at this place where you are really ready and willing to do that. And I think it is a process to get to that point.
Yeah, I'm tired.
Yeah. I think that actually has a big part to play with it. It's like, I just don't have time to go through, and it's draining to keep that inside.
It is. And, I would get sick, and I'm still working on right-sided things, from my shoulder to my neck to my, everything, my knee, my hip, all sorts of right-sided things. You're masculine. And, I get told not to be too over analytical, but when things keep hitting me from the right side, it's like,
well, that's a pattern.
It is. Yeah, it starts to be a pattern, and you don't want to go down a rabbit hole or anything, but I'm working on it.
So it's interesting because you said right side is masculine, and I've heard so many different interpretations about what right and left mean. I've heard receiving and giving. I've heard that left is masculine, right is feminine. I've heard there's another one in there, but I can't remember what it is. It's so interesting to me because it's like, I think it has to do with our own interpretation of what it feels like in a way.
Well, and here's the thing. I've been getting acupuncture for the last 3 weeks now due to this car accident I was in. And she's been working out my right side, which is what was very affected. And she said I'm, overheated. Well, I mean, I'm we are getting up there. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm, so I've gone through the big change and everything. So everything should be good, but yet I'm overheated. So she works on turning that down. So that's, more yang and masculine.
And so what's coming to me, not that we were going to do like, intuitive readings or anything, is that overheating is maybe it's what it represents for me. So, take what works, throw out what doesn't. But for me, it's keeping stuff inside. It's still holding things in, especially emotionally. And
like
a lot
a
of times,
teapot.
yeah. Ooh, maybe
Yeah.
that's what, no, it wasn't hot water that guy poured in that vision. Maybe it wasn't. It was cool water to cool me off.
Yeah.
Holding that emotion in. And a part of it goes with what you were saying about words. It's like, I keep a lot of that emotion in because I have a really hard time articulating it.
Yep.
And when I'm trying to speak my truth with other people, I can't speak from emotion because it doesn't make any sense to people who don't have that level of intuitive ability. I mean, the ability is totally there. I'm talking about my husband, and he's very intuitive. He just he's not open to it. And so he has a really hard time connecting dots that I don't even necessarily think are dots, because they seem so obvious to me. And for him, it's like, no, you're going to have to explain every single little detail. And I am absolutely not able to do that when I'm in an emotional place. I have a hard time doing it when I'm not in an emotional place. It's like I'm trying to send it to him telepathically, and he's like, no, don't do that. My daughter totally can do it. She gets it, but he just not.
And that's like my workplace. I cannot speak to them at their level of perception. They don't get it. They think what they're doing is okay, and it's not okay. So, I feel like it's constantly a fight. So, and I don't want to fight. So I have to shift my perception of this is not a fight. This is gaining clarity and awareness of a situation so that it can be changed and flipped. Because I think my flipping of something will set a chain reaction. How they perceive it is their problem.
Yeah, well, it is. Think about how long it's taken to recognize that. I mean, for me, it's taken me this long. It's like, because I've always really been concerned about other people's perceptions and tried to not manage their perceptions, but minimize what I think are negative perceptions of me or of other things. It's like, I just want to jump on in there and be like, hey, pay attention to all the good in the world, or I don't want them to hate me. I want them to like me. So I'm going to change myself so that they'll like me. And
we can't do that.
No.
We got to be who we are.
Yeah. I was telling someone just the other day that I think it might have actually been my husband. I'm like, when people say be yourself, for me, that has always been just like an abstract term. Now, I usually like abstract, but for me, it's like, I don't know what that is because I've always I've unconsciously accommodated other people and adapted to who they are and what their needs are. I haven't known what my own are without realizing it. And so
because it makes it a peaceful place for us if they're happy. And that's it. We want to be happy. And it feels the only path to do that is to make everybody else happy so that we can just chill.
Yep.
And,
for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of my exploration recently is allowing the discomfort of other emotions in, where I used to push them away because I didn't like conflict. I didn't like that discord and disharmony, because it's always been my quest to create that harmony, in part because it feels good. It feels good to me.
Yeah.
And
but they have a choice.
Yes.
And happiness is an inside job.
Yes.
So if they're working that happiness, and if you just remind them and plant that seed constantly, which is what I had to do with Lucas over, I don't know how many, since 2015 or 16, whenever all of the school and custody stuff happened, remind him happiness is an inside job.
Yeah.
Nobody can bring that to you from the exterior. That is not going to happen. Period. End of story. Done. And I remind myself of that too. It's like, okay, what am I going to do to bring my joy up? Because boy, at that point when all that happened, I was lower than low. So, you know.
Do you feel you have to go through that in order to really understand what it means to be happy, or to get to the point where happiness can flow more freely?
Well, I think there's a yin and a yang, and I think sometimes you have to experience one to know the other. You know, I mean, because if our life were just a straight line, I mean, the hell, you know.
You could say that, you know.
Well, what the heck is that about?
There are even keeled people out there, but for me, so this was another comparison my husband and I had made, because he's like, yeah, you're kind of like this, you know, and I'm like, and how would you be? And he's like this, and I would agree, because he is that guy who just doesn't really show extreme emotions, and extreme emotions being like laughing a lot, or, you know, being in a bad mood, right? So, you know, that it shows. I'm attuned to that. I know when he's in a good or bad mood, but it's not like you can totally. Everybody knows that I'm in a good or bad mood. Okay, and it's not because I want to express that to everybody else. It's, I think now, me allowing all of those emotions to come through instead of fighting them. And the more I allow them, the more aligned I am, and I don't even know what I'm going to say, because it's like those extreme emotions are still felt, but when I accept them instead of try to hide them in one way, shape, or form, I think I show it more authentically, and the outcomes are different for me as well as the room, you know, or whoever's around me.
Authenticity. I have people, when people first start where I work in my lab, it's funny because I go through periods of just, you know, being joyful, pretty much dancing around work, and la, 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 you know, I'm always happy. I'm working with the patients, and, you know, I am who I am. And they're like, you're so joyful. And I'm like, why not be, you know? And I have my down times too. And I go quiet, I go frustrated. And it's like, I just take a big deep breath and here we go. And it's like, people can tell, but it's like being authentic and who you are. You know, I'll smile with the patients and always be good and listen. And a lot of times my joy will be brought up by them too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Allowing, you know, it's almost like a redirection in a way, but it's not casting off that emotion. It's still there. It's just,
you recognize it.
Yeah.
And I think that's, oh, I thought I heard something. I was like, the heck? Yeah, I think it's important to experience it and to allow yourself, and not, you know, not have a tantrum in the middle of a store or something, because that's...
Oh, right.
But, you know, at work, I will speak my piece, and when I'm not heard, I'll take it up a level.
I think along that same vein, I've had more experiences recently where something, you know, it was a customer service experience, and I was frustrated, and I was talking to somebody. My daughter was in the room, but I was talking to somebody, and I'm like, you know, he asked a general question. I'm like, you know, I just have to say I'm really frustrated with this experience, and here's why. But I was able to articulate it at that point, instead of what I used to do, would avoid the whole conversation because I didn't want any potential conflict to emerge. And now it's like, well, I'm going to have to tell this guy what's going on. And I made it really clear, I don't believe it's him, it's the system. I get that it's the system, but here's how it looks like from a customer perspective. And somebody needs to take note. And if you're not going to take note, fine, I'm not going to be a customer anymore. Right. You know, but I used to just silently do that stuff kind of below the line, and nobody'd ever know. And I would feel unheard and invisible. And that's a big part of my journey right now, is that invisibility and feeling unheard. It's like, well, why is that? Well, because I'm doing that to myself. You know?
Yeah, me too. And I'm getting a lot better at it. I know where to focus my anger. I know, my bullcrap detector's on full high, and it's like I could walk out of a room and go, okay, A, B, C, D, and E. Something's not right, and something's not right in Denmark. And I can pretty much spell it out. Am I right 100% of the time? Not always, but you know what? I can tell when something's fishy.
Yeah, and so what do you do with that? Because what I've found is when I have my intuitive hits about something, and I will, it's easiest within my family, but I will name the elephant, the thing that's coming up and saying, you say you're not judging, but I can tell that you are. And here's how, and, some people are like, yeah, you got me, right? And other people are just in absolute denial. And when they're in denial, it's like there's no validation yet. I used to not trust that. And now I'm like, yeah, you know what? I know what I feel. And that's really steered me in the right direction more often than not.
Yeah. Well, and, okay, I pursue jobs, right?
What do you mean? You've only applied for a couple, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, name the number, because it's amazing.
This is just with one place where I am now. I've applied 102 different times for jobs for promotion. And that's since 2007. I have gotten my bachelor's degree since then, and I'm almost done with my master's. I am still in the front lines. Bullcrap. Meanwhile, I watch people who are 25 to 30 years old get promoted above me, even though I have 23 and a half years of experience. So how's that for a summary?
And some of them don't have the requisite qualifications.
No, they'll be a high school diploma because they don't have to pay them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm frustrated. I've applied for other jobs too. And in the rare case that I actually get an interview, I will say my prayers and focus myself. And if this is a job that needs to happen, that will help me grow, so mote it be, period. End of story. And I always have a sidebar to the universe going, don't mind my frustration and hissy fit when it doesn't happen. If it doesn't happen, I'll get over myself because I know you've got my back, period. And, the last time it happened was a year ago when a coworker and I...
That was a whole year ago?
Almost.
Oh, God, okay.
Wow,
sorry to interrupt.
Okay, so last March, March of 2019, I was very frustrated because my job told me I couldn't go to Bliss. I couldn't have the time off. And I'm like, enough's enough. And so I started applying, and this company was a small company, seemed very cool. I applied for it, and I told a coworker to apply as well. And she said, well, I don't want to take your chances away. And I told her there's always enough. If this is meant to be, it'll be for the right person. And so she applied and I applied. We both got phone interviews, both got in-person interviews. And here's the funny thing. She's 34 and I'm not. And she went to her interview the day before I did. She was hired within 20 minutes. 20 minutes. She got a $7,000 raise from where she was. She got hired in 20 minutes. I go there the next day. I spend an hour and a half arguing and defending my education and everything else. Now, my old coworker has a 4-year degree in German. This was a healthcare business. I have a bachelor's in health management and almost a master's in health informatics. And I had to defend myself for an hour and a half.
And this was a healthcare related job.
That was, yeah. And so what's funny is they said they'd get back to me. And I said, now, wait a second here. You hired my friend yesterday in 20 minutes, and the lady looked like she swallowed razor blades. Like I was caught. Yeah, pretty much. And I said, fine, whatever. And I left, and I called you right away. And I said, I know this isn't going to happen. And you said, now let's, and I'm like, no, it's not going to happen. But if it's for my greatest good and this is how they run things, we don't want any part of that. And as it turns out, when my friend got 10 weeks into her job, she was laid off, period.
Yeah.
And so she told me, you dodged a bullet. And this was after she spent her first 3 weeks letting me know how cool it was. She got her own laptop. She could work from home and all this. And meanwhile, my present job, we're treated like slaves, you know. And I'm like just plodding along going, you know what? If the right thing comes along, it'll happen and everything will bloom. And, she's fine. She found another job. But yeah, 10 weeks in, 10 weeks.
And it would have had much different repercussions for you, to have been laid off within 10 weeks.
Yeah.
She has additional income and didn't have a high need for that for support. Whereas you, it's like you needed the benefits, you needed the income, all of those things. And so, and I remember before you had that interview also doing the best and highest good piece. And it's like, that's always the hardest part, I think. Mm-hmm. It's whatever's in your best and highest good, but you don't know it at the time.
Because I can't see that far.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was the same for the houses. When I was looking for houses post-divorce, I asked for my greatest and highest good. And when I moved into that twin home post-divorce, stuff started happening immediately. And I'm like, how could this be for my highest good if I'm freaking out every day when I walk in here? And I had to get to the, nope, not going to do this. I just bought a house and it's like freaking talking to me. Come on. And I'm trying to be a single parent and protect my son. And my house is blowing light bulbs. It's this, it's that. But it sent me on my journey. That's like where I first started to get traction, because something doesn't touch you and shake your bed and go in and visit your 2-year-old son and freak your cat out, without someone saying, hey, wait a second here.
Yeah.
And even you stayed there because I had a lot of people in, and Megan stayed there and she saw the person that I had dreamed about too. And he had actually been in that house. Yeah. He lived in that house.
Etched in my mind.
Yeah, he was pleasant. But,
well, he had a gun.
You did.
Did I say he shot me? Because he might have. I can't remember now. Because
oh, he put his gun in my face in my dream. And I'm like, whatever.
Great.
I woke up and he eventually got shifted. He was a drug mule. But, it is what it is. That house woke me up. And I left there knowing, who I was and that I could have dominion. And I knew about dominion. I didn't call it that for my son as he was growing up. And he had lots of things in his room, including a bear, which I believe was his animal guide. And he kept screaming about the bear at 3 years old. And I said, well, maybe the bear is there to protect you, but if you're scared of the bear, you need to tell the bear to go away, but only you can do it because it's your space. I will come in and I will hold your hand, but you got to do this work. And
well, you were really helpful to me with my daughter who was having she was having nightmares, but it wasn't like that. It's mainly about loss of me. But she didn't like her closet. She was afraid of her closet and other things. She just had to have things a certain way. So you really helped me figure out, okay, well, how can we be creative with this? And so I got a little crystal chakra wand. It was like about that big, very small. But I'm like, I went around and I'm like, did this kind of incantation about releasing them or telling the monsters to go away. They're not allowed in this space. And I talked to her about angels, but then I also taught her how to use that wand for herself. She doesn't really do it that much anymore now, but she used to because it empowered her to be able to create dominion in her own space. And somebody else had said something about monster spray. Was that you? Yes. Yeah. Which I just love the idea of that.
Yeah. It has like eucalyptus and sage and lavender, something like that. And it was some spring water. Another friend that was a paranormal investigator gave that to me. Mm-hmm. And that worked great for Lucas. He could spray that when he was frightened in his room. Yeah. But he had a lot of weird stuff happen. And I remember I got a little statue of Archangel Michael. And I had it on my dresser. And he really liked it. And he was having nightmares. And so I went in and I put it on his dresser. And I remember he went to stay at his dad's after that for like a week. And when he came back and he was going to bed that night, I had put it back in my room. He's like, "Where's Michael?"
Wow.
So he had to have that in there. It was definitely something he felt. And when he was 5, he went over to the UK with his dad, where my ex-husband was from the UK. And I told him anytime he had fear, I said, you call on Michael, because the little statue has Michael with the big sword. I said, he takes that sword and he cuts away what scares you. And he said he did. He was 5, so it's not like he can make this stuff up. He said when he was over there, he did get scared one night, and he called on Archangel Michael. And hearing him say Archangel at that age was pretty adorable.
I'll bet.
And he said he just called on him, and he said he saw a big poof of like blue-purple sparkles in the room. And I mean, I never told him what he would see or not see. And he'd deny it now at 17, but
Sure. Yep.
He's too cool.
Yeah.
But that house opened up a lot. Even when he was 3, he was eating pizza one night. We were having dinner, and he looked at me and he said, "Mama," "Yes." "Before I was Lucas, I was your mama. And I got a tummy ache and died." And I'm like, I spit my pizza out. I was like, "What?" You don't want to make a scene,
Right.
And it's like, but you want to keep them talking. Really? Go on. And he's like, "Well, I'm going to go back to my TV show now." "Okay." Really? And it was when I lived over there that I did the past life regression, because I feared death like people fear the plague. And I didn't know why I had this fear of death. I had no idea. But it's like, just everything. And when you live in fear, you're not living.
Right.
So one day I was just motivated and kind of going through websites, and I found this therapist that did past life regressions, and he had studied under some of my favorite authors when it comes to this, and that was Michael Newton, who does Life Between Life regressions. And he wrote 2 books, Journey of Souls and Destiny of Souls, which are absolutely mind-blowing. So he studied with him. And then also he spoke of Neil, Conversations with God.
Neil Diamond Walsh, is that his name?
Yes.
Neil? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he brought up a lot of that. And so I decided, what can it hurt? I'm going to go do just a past life regression with him. And it was life-changing. 3 hours. I actually had to get up and go potty in the middle of it. And I still dropped right back into hypnosis,
Wow.
deeply. I was like, dang. He said it happens. It's easy to alter yourself. We'll be fine. But, I was able to take myself up to the soul level, be at home with my higher self in between after I died. First of all, I got to learn that it doesn't hurt to die. You're moving energy. I lived a long life. It wasn't a nice life, but I lived a long life. And I remember, he takes you to your death scene. And it's like all of a sudden I was laying on this bed, and then all of a sudden I wasn't. I was like this energy, and all of a sudden I could move at the speed of thought. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like the bomb. And I was like zipping all over the place like a tennis ball, like my head normally does. And he said I was smiling. He's like, "I'm just going to let you go for a while." And so I was just zipping everywhere at the speed of thought. And that's where, when my father passed, I told him to just go, because if he would think of someone, he could be there that quickly. You could go anywhere, it doesn't matter. Be another universe. You just move. And eventually he pulled me back and he let me go where I'm supposed to go. And what I found interesting is, I remember looking beside me, I couldn't see who I was. I just knew I was. I was just energy, and I was being escorted by these things that didn't look like people, but they were beings, and everything was white. And I was in a room where it's like there'd be communication, and it was telepathic, and then I would feel vibration that felt like if you stood too close to a speaker at a concert. that kind of vibration. And it would be like we were having a conversation, and then I would feel that. We were having a conversation, I would feel that. And I looked at the therapist and I said, oh my God, this is like healing. This is sound healing. This is healing. You know, and after that happened, then we let myself be pulled further. And that's where you end up, where your higher self is, looking at everything. And he asked me to look down, and he said, you look at the life you just left, and you look at Julie, and what can you show Julie from where you are? Basically, what have you learned from this life that she can use in this other life? And I'm looking, well, not looking, just laying there going, who the hell is Julie? I didn't know who I was. Like,
wow.
Yeah. And that's where I realized we are just a pinprick of time. This is when they say the holographic universe, let's have fun. This is a playground, you know. That gave me a different perspective on everything. And it totally made me lose my fear of death. I was in I would say, a happy void for like 3 weeks, because I was just like drifting, going, oh my God, the world has, even the people that were haters on me and abusers on me and all this stuff, they all had purpose. Mm-hmm. And it helps you to let it go. You let it go, because really, you let it go. And I also did a soul retrieval with him too. And that was pretty amazing, because that was before I started the weight loss journey, and I wanted it to be successful. So what we were doing is we were forgiving those in my life who've contributed to things, so I could lose that first. And then we would allow healing in. And in doing this, that was amazing. That was in hypnosis too. And the second he took me down, I knew it was soul retrieval. All the little places that you'd left stuff. And it was really far out. And I physically felt the healing when we had cleared out and we'd watched everything walk out the door. It's gone now. And he goes, and now we fill the space with love. You know, open up and allow the love in. And I could physically feel it coming in. And I'm like, people do drugs to get to this state.
Seriously.
I mean, it was amazing. And yeah, I ended up having to go back to him a couple weeks later because I was crap for sick. And he said that's normal when you're getting rid of the crap, you know.
It has to move through you. You can't just release it, right?
Right. Yeah. And he said that was normal. But I remember going home after that session, the soul retrieval session, and going for a walk. And I felt like I was walking with my 7-year-old self, my 9-year-old self, my 15-year-old self, saying, look, we made it, you know? So.
Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I've done independently, just me, you know, through my own little guided visualization in my head, I suppose, going through and picking up pieces. And it's based on somebody's going back to the child version of myself. But then after that, I really expounded that, going back to all of the places where I think I became fragmented in some way. And I kind of forgot about that. Because when you're talking about bringing those back in, those aspects of yourself back in, that's so powerful, and something I feel I can definitely benefit from doing again. And it's funny because the term soul retrieval has always meant something different to me, like retrieving past souls, maybe reconnecting beyond this life to other aspects of ourselves in a much bigger picture. So it's always seemed very lofty. But the way you describe it, it's a lot less lofty in that respect, because it's all based on this incarnation.
Yeah.
And it's so, I keep thinking about fragmentation lately, fragmentation and wholeness. And I keep thinking about all of the times when I do feel like I've been fragmented in one way, but I haven't really thought about it as fragmentation, if that makes any sense. It's like, oh, okay, so I've hurt myself in this place because I threw myself under the bus, metaphorically speaking. It's like, well,
Yeah.
I did something in favor of somebody else, but left me kind of oppressed, in one way, shape, or form. And I'm looking at how I have become my own oppressor, and even use the word abuser, because I'm doing that in a way to reconnect with those aspects of myself and shift that oppressive habit of, like keeping my own self obscured, changing the habits into one of love, of a person who loves themselves. I've always thought I've loved myself, but when I think about some of the things I've done in favor of keeping the peace or accommodating somebody else, it's like, wow, when I look at it in those harsh terms, I want to do that because it's kind of a wake-up call for me that, if I love myself, I would treat myself differently than I have.
Well, it depends on how deep you go into those feelings too, those negative feelings, because again, they're sticky. That's what we've always been taught. And it's like, if you get stuck there, how do you get out of there?
Yeah, I'm experiencing that. For sure. But I also believe that they're sticky, but that's where the asking for love and support from my angels and source and higher self, spirit guides, has really helped me. I do get stuck, and I allow myself to get stuck for a little bit. I want to feel those emotions, in part because I think it's actually a part of this life-changing aspect that I'm going through. I'm not doing it to beat myself up.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I'm doing it to understand. And so in a sense, it's opening the door to the cellar. I don't even want to say basement, because basement's nice, and the cellar is the thing that's like, there's hardly any windows, and there's weeds or vines or things growing around there, and it's damp, and little aspects of myself are hanging out in the corner there because they haven't been allowed into the light. And so I'm going down there and I'm retrieving those, I'm giving them hugs, I'm accepting them, the shadow aspects of myself, and trying to bring that into the light, so that they feel a part of me as a whole. I feel more whole as a result, but I've been doing this kind of practice of bringing them up from below, and then also bringing in kind of like my higher self soul aspect from above. So I do both of those, bring them into this physical body that is me now, and it feels amazing. It's keeping it in that amazing place that I'm finding kind of challenging right now. Things can kick my butt,
Well, you get to that high place, and then something happens, and you're like, and there it goes.
Yep, it's like, here I am flying around, my little angel wings, and then all of a sudden, wah, here I am, splat, and then it's like brushing myself off, picking myself up, and going, okay, I can do this.
we get the practice of awareness, and so you find what works for you for bringing your joy up again.
Yeah.
And that's not always easy, especially like with a busy life.
It's not always convenient with a busy life either.
No.
In that, for me, it's taken on its own form, and so some of those shadow and emotion things I can sense. I've become more attuned to my physical body, which is really good. And shout out to Lauren Antuafermo, because she's the one who started it all.
I know.
She's
little
a rock
instigator.
But now it's like, it feels like a big bubble, and it comes from down below. I don't know exactly where it originates, but I can feel it when it starts entering my torso, and I can tell it's an emotion of some sort, but an emotional bubble, and that it's typically a shadow thing, because the ones that I feel that are really high vibe don't have this pressure of a big bubble inside of me. And so I know that it's something that's going to potentially rock my world a little bit, but the more of these bubbles that are surfacing, the more I'm working through them, and then they don't really seem to affect me after I do work through them. But it's not like I say, okay, I've got 20 minutes, let's do a bubble. It's more like, oh, I'm going to my daughter's school, I'm sitting in the car, and here comes this bubble, and all of a sudden I start crying, and I'm like, oh, awesome. Because I really want to go to my daughter's new school looking like, this, scary lady with the blotchy red eyes. And, it's like people are like, oh.
And that's where I get with patients when you have someone going through a tough time and they talk about it and you can bump up against that emotion and you're making them feel better. And then they're happy and you feel the love. Love gets me every time.
Yeah.
It's like, I just gush. And,
yeah.
It helps, keep them objective and you spread a little joy or truth on them, to bring a little bit of perspective and let them know it's okay. Yeah. And then they give their love to you and you're like, I just go, and it is who I am.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of self-acceptance. I heard myself talking about what other people might think of me with the big red blotchy eyes, and I think a part of that is protective with my daughter, so they don't think she's the girl with the crazy mom. But it's not about them. It's about, this is my journey, and I'm totally on it. I didn't even realize I was on a big, significant life journey, but now I'm very clear in that that's a big part of my whole purpose here this time around. Is that is the journey.
It is.
It's discovery, it's understanding, and all of those things, and other things are important in my life too. But that's now has really taken high precedent, high priority. It's like,
I always laugh too when people. My whole life, I've been called strange, weird, blah 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 blah, and I'd always look at them and I'd smile and I'd say, "Well, actually, I prefer to be called unique."
Yes.
And then let it go, because it's like, you know what, you don't define me, I define me.
Exactly. Yep.
And really what you think of me is none of my business, and end of story. Yep. And I walk away because there's enough ego out there for
yeah. See, now I always think that people typically have always thought of me as normal, like so normal that I have blended in. And so now I'm like, I've never really felt normal. But I think that being able to blend in has created a facade of normalcy that does not align with who I am. And so now I'm like, I'm not that person.
No, be bohemian, get crazy, get nuts, dress up.
It's really hard to do. It's hard to step out of that conformity, the energy of conformity, and stepping out when you're with other people who are used to you being a certain way as well. It's like multi-dimensional Velcro or something, because it's like, and then every time I think I've kind of made a break for it, something kind of drags me back in, or sucks me back in from a magnet standpoint, and it's like, no.
See, that's where your tribe will stick to you always. Your tribe will always stick to you, and you think about, going to Bliss. It's like, the weirder the better. Let's rock this thing. And it didn't matter. I mean, we all just got our weird on, and it was fabulous.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Remember to attach to those high vibe frequencies of bliss.
Yes!
Because right now I'm kind of headed there.
Peeps,
I think you probably are too.
Yes, I miss my bliss peeps. But justice is in the offing. That promotion will happen. I'm all there.
Yep. Yeah.
So.
Well,
it's a beautiful thing.
It is beautiful. And, as you know, you've always been my rock when it comes to reminding me of who I am beyond the surface, because you've known me longer than, aside from my parents and sisters, who I never really feel have known me all that well. They're more like, this is who this is how we see Megan, right? But you've actually known me at a soul level. So it's really great to have your perspective especially when I shift back into that should normalcy, conformity mindset. Because for me, that's kind of a big life thing to get away from. And you remind me of times when I have been that. And it's like so helpful.
Oh,
So
that's
thank you.
good. Thank you. It's so funny because you define it in all these fancy words, the normalcy and
Conformity.
well, and it's like
I'm like, okay.
I just think, yeah, no, that's not who you are. Cut the crap. What are we doing? No. I don't always know. Again, that's my discernment that kicks in, going, yeah, that's not right. And that's how it comes to me. It's like, yeah, that's not right. I don't always know how to define it. And I can't tell you what the junk is in between, but I know when something isn't as it should be.
How does that show up for you?
I think a feeling in my body that just kind of makes my heart skip a beat that says no. And so if somebody...
So it's kind of visceral.
It is. It's like, and if somebody were to say, well, you tell me why, give me 18 reasons why this shouldn't happen. And I'd be like, no, I can't. It just isn't.
I've decided not to even offer, when they want to do that, that's their own way of trying to reject whatever your feeling is. And that's very three-dimensional in my view. And so now I'm like, no, I don't really have to explain myself. I can tell you that I have a feeling this isn't right, and that is good enough for me. If it's not good enough for you, fine.
Well,
Nobody's asking you to own it.
Exactly. And me leaving the justification bull crap, I don't have to justify.
Yep.
If I'm told that this isn't right for me from my own inner core, then it's like, I don't got to justify that. I just say no.
Yep. I just had a big deja vu with this. Have we had this conversation before? Because I'm seriously asking this question because it's like, whoa, this whole scene just with major deja vu. Timeline intersection, maybe.
I was just going to say, I saw it.
Cool. Something interesting. Okay, well, go ahead. What you were going to say?
No. Go ahead.
So earlier, I lit some cedar in my space here. I light something every morning, and it's just a little practice I'm doing for fairies and elementals, and really trying to connect to the earth realm in a different way. And I lit this cedar, and it burned, and I saw it burn. I waited until it was on fire and burning, but then I left the room, and when I came back and I started putzing around that area, I've noticed, and I'm looking at it right now, the cedar little piece that I had lit isn't lit. I mean, there's no marking. There's no evidence that it was actually lit at all. There's no charcoal or darkened spaces, anything. There's no ash, nothing at all. So I just decided, wow, I somehow skipped a timeline, intersected somewhere, and something has changed, because I remember doing that this morning and it lighting up, and typically it's blackened and leaves ash.
Well, I have the pothole, no pothole gas station.
Oh, yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, there's a gas station that I go to that it depends on my frame of mind. I feel like it's almost a good, bad thing. If I'm in a good frame of mind, the pothole's covered up nice and smoothly. And if I'm in a bad frame of mind, you could lose a car in that thing.
And so this seriously happens more than once. So it's not like one day there's a pothole, the next day there's not. It's like any given day there's a pothole.
Yeah.
There is not.
It is. I know. And I'm like, and I think I posted a long time ago on Facebook about that. I'm like, is this a thing? I mean, am I losing my mind? Because I was just there, and then I wasn't. I came the next day and it was back. How do they do that? They pave over it, and then they bring it back, and then they pave over it, and so.
There was a whole thing at last year's Bliss Retreat around that I just found super fascinating. And somebody had said it was the Nelson Mandela effect, which I had not heard of before. And so for those of you who aren't aware, there are people from Bliss here today. Awesome. Hi.
Who's all here? Oh, yay.
I just saw Steph and
Kathy Sue.
Yes, Kathy Sue. So welcome.
Yay.
Awesome.
Woohoo.
Anyway, so we were talking about, some people believe or remember Nelson Mandela going to prison and dying, and other people remember him going to prison and not dying and becoming president. And all of this, so a very different timeline, and people believe both of them, and because of their own experiences. And then coming back after that, I remember something similar happening with Dennis Hopper. Both my husband and I remember him passing away, and I had said something from like a previous mashup where I had read this day in history and I said it was his birthday, RIP, and somebody's like, wait, isn't he still alive? And other people are like, yeah, I remember him being alive. And I'm asking my husband, don't you remember him passing away? And he's like, yeah. So we're like, whoa, this is cool. You know, well, really,
Yeah.
he's more like whatever, but I'm like, whoa, this is cool. And so now, I mean, ever since then, I've been paying, well, and probably even before then, but now there's some language around it, like the pothole, no pothole thing. And
oh my God.
you know,
Yeah.
cedar. It's so strange to me that there doesn't appear to be any, I mean, strange and cool. I'll just totally embrace it and go with it. But
Yeah.
since it happened today, the day of our mashup, and somewhere around a super new moon, which we couldn't decide if that was yesterday or today.
I know. I saw and then after our conversation yesterday, I saw that it was last night. I'm like, I better clean my brain up. You know?
Well, I thought it was today until I saw something that said it was yesterday. And yeah, it was like a short notice thing for me too. It's like, okay, all right.
But Northern Lights, if you're on the northern tier, the Northern Lights tonight and tomorrow night.
Really? And we can't see anything from our house. It's covered. Our house is always in the shade. So now, I mean, our trees have grown out so much that I can't see full moons, which is kind of maddening for me. It's like I know it's there and I can kind of see some light shining in every now and again at like midnight, you know. Oh, there it is, kind of. But I don't get to see it anymore. It's like, oh.
Well, I'd say go out to the park, but you might get ate by a cougar.
Yeah, right. So we have had cougar sightings, except somebody then recently said they think it's a coyote, which we definitely have. But the picture they showed of this cougar to me looked like a gazelle. So I'm like, okay, well, I mean, it was at a distance. But I'm like, I don't know where the gazelle came from, but that's what it looked like to me. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting, maybe it's a shapeshifter.
It could be. Yeah. Someone gets bored, you know, it's like, let's take this one. Let's scare them all.
Yeah, doesn't scare me. I'm like, cool, I'm kind of listening for its cry or whatever you call it, its roar.
Yeah.
What do you call a cougar who's making sound? Do they cry? Do they? Because they don't bark,
they roar.
Right? It's not like they meow. And
it's a kitty cry. I wonder if they purr.
They might. I bet they do. They're a cat, right?
I
think
know.
All cats purr, don't they? Even
I
lions.
love, yes. Even special kitties like Lucy.
Yeah. Lucy really is very special. She's a very interesting cat. Very beautiful too.
I found out Mark and Marianne Volbrecht, they had a kitty that had the same malady as Lucy. Lucy's got some weird cerebellar hyperplasia, which is a mouthful. They call it CH for short. She's not all in there, but she's sweet.
She is quite territorial too, which you don't know, but
I know. Well, and as Trisha would say, Trisha read her once and she goes, you know, she's on the spectrum. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, you have known that. Yep.
Yeah.
Ever since she was a kitten. But, yeah, she's awesome. Well, dear, it's we have 4 minutes.
Oh my God. Do you see how that works?
Yes.
All right. Well, this has been a blast. Yes.
Very much so. Yes. I really appreciate your joining us today. And I thank you all for joining us today and wish you an awesome mystical weekend. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
See you later. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.